Hello, everyone. Excited to be here again today. Want to welcome Noel Wilson to the Smart Office podcast. Today, he's the founder and CEO of Intelligenic. If I'm mistaken, is that Intelligenic.ai, right?
That's right.
So
Yeah, you got it.
I had the privilege of, I had to go to your website, check out, so much amazing things there. But during the course of this podcast, we're going to talk about a lot of things. If one can spend the entire day, I saw there's so much amazing thing about new technology, AI. So just to begin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you represent for the company?
Yeah, happy to do it. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm excited to discuss Intelligenic with you today as well. As you mentioned, I'm the CEO and founder. Started the company a little over 2 years ago. Part of the reason I started the company is I've been in software development in some fashion throughout my entire career. From when I started my career, with hands-on keyboard to eventually being responsible for leading teams, building the software, and then long-term managing the business related to it. And all along the way, I'd always been a consultant, helping clients in developing software in various different industries. That role and those opportunities gave me a very unique perspective on software across multiple industries in many different situations. Interestingly enough, though, each of those situations were pretty similar. In that the software development process is highly manual in nature.
Yeah.
And it still is today, even with the introduction of a lot of tools, in particular AI, which we're going to talk a little bit about today because it's what my company does.
Yeah.
And as a result, it leads to a lot of inefficiencies and high costs and a lot of effort and long delivery times to produce quality software. And then the reality is we still, quite frankly, don't have enough qualified people to meet the demand for all the software that we're building. And so all of those things combined led me down a path to found my company, Intelligenic, where we are building an AI-driven platform that automates the software development lifecycle comprehensively by creating enterprise context to produce production-ready code with minimal iterations. We effectively enable vibe coding for the enterprise.
So you
all
build
of
on
these
vibe
things
coding.
that we're doing, that's right, support all of the people that are involved in software development to finally be able to meet the demand for all the software that they're being asked to build and do so much more efficiently, with greater productivity, reducing overall costs and time to market to build that software.
Wow, that's good. We're going to talk a lot about that because it's going to be center of this podcast. A lot of people want to know. There's so many questions out there. CEOs and companies it's a great line they're going to talk about. I know you answered part of my questions because I wanted to talk about what inspired you to start Intelligenic.ai. But again, you've touched on that. What problem were you seeing in the industry that made you say, well, there has to be a smarter way? I know we talked about that, but can you zoom in more on that aspect, the problems we're seeing in the industry that made you say, okay, there has to be a way?
Sure, happy to do that. I think what I'll do is I'll drill a little bit more deeply into vibe coding.
Yeah.
So, vibe coding is incredibly popular right now. A lot of people see the benefits associated with.
We don't know if the industry is accepting it yet, but it's very popular for those who know it.
I mean, there's interest. How about that? There's popular interest.
Yeah.
I would agree with you. I don't think that it's fully been accepted yet.
Right.
And there's a lot of reasons associated with that. And first and foremost, I think that people recognize that there's a lot of benefits to be had from vibe coding using AI to develop software. You can give your current software development teams these tools to be able to produce more software much more efficiently, which is going to reduce your overall time and effort, which ultimately reduces the ultimate cost associated with creating software. But even with those benefits, they're incredibly difficult to achieve. And the reason for that is that you can't just expect AI to be the panacea, the one solution for you. It still requires an incredibly high level of expertise from the people that are operating it to be able to produce anything relevant or quality from the actual models and the agents that are being used to produce that. And then you need to be able to understand whether what's been produced is working and of quality, right? And so there's a lot of challenges associated with that because quite frankly, most organizations lack the expertise to be able to get the most from those models. They often don't understand what is quality that's produced. The models often produce content that is unnecessary. You
Exactly.
ask it to produce, you know, the software, and it produces a lot of things that you just don't even need. And sometimes it creates libraries that it doesn't need. And sometimes it thinks it created libraries when it never did.
Yeah.
And then quite frankly, the models don't ever truly consider things that are incredibly important to most organizations, certainly to enterprises, such as security and
Right.
compliance.
Exactly.
So the
Compliance,
combination of
security,
these, right, these problems
and
uh,
yeah,
make
data
it
protection.
right. Data protection is another thing that they don't consider unless you have the experts that know what instructions to give it, the prompts that you need to be able to create, and the context
Context.
that you
Yeah.
could provide to it. Context is key. That's something we're going
Yeah.
to continue to talk about today. I'll get into some of that a
Yeah.
little bit further. And so that's what I've recognized in um, our journey as we've developed our own platform to address these challenges, that while the tools in their raw form exist, you really need to have a deep level of expertise to be able to get the quality that you would expect out of it when you're producing software. And there's a lot of different techniques that you can employ to make that happen. And in Intelligenic's platform, we've incorporated all of these techniques to assist the software development teams that have fully embraced the concept around using artificial intelligence to make themselves more productive so that they truly can reap the benefits from software development using AI like they would have expected. Here's a perfect example, and I'll conclude this as some of the challenges that I've recognized. I can cite three examples
Yeah.
from
I was going to go into that.
different.
Like, what are some of the challenges that companies may face when they try to automate processes today, like the challenges and what you're trying to solve?
So, so the three examples that I often share with people are from IBM, James Gosling, who is the creator of Java and Adidas. And each case, when they attempted to use artificial intelligence to, enhance their software development capabilities, they encountered problems right away. The primary issue in each one of the cases was that the more complex the software, the more problematic the outcome was. The- Most of the tools that you can utilize today are really great at producing simple applications and prototypes. But as soon as you get past that to create, I don't
Production
know,
ready?
a making an application that needs with multiple different data sources, it's ill-equipped to handle that unless you're able to provide it the necessary expertise and the right approach to be able to get it to produce more manageable outcomes associated with that.
Wow, that makes sense. Now, I mean, as you rightly said, some of these examples, they are very clear because we're looking at the journey of vibe coding and everybody's watching it at speed today. And companies like Intelligenic are taking advantage and trying to let people know, yeah, they could do production ready vibe coding. That's something most companies are still hesitant about. So how do you define? Let me talk a little bit about Intelligenic, like in simple terms. So what is Intelligenic in very simple terms for anybody out there? When you hear about Intelligenic.ai, what is it?
Our platform enables the software development professional, and this could include product managers. It can include the actual software engineers themselves, quality assurance, testing engineers, DevOps engineers, or the actual product leaders. There's a whole litany of people that are involved. But what our product does is it enables them to utilize an agentic framework that will manage the whole process from beginning to end to produce working software. It does that by interacting with those end users to get them to provide context about what they're trying to build and their organization. That's
Okay.
like to
So
build this context to actually be able to provide that to the model so that the agents can produce a higher quality output. In addition to that, we then begin to produce work products that these individuals would have to create in their traditional product development initiative. These work products could include things like product requirements definitions, user flows, wireframes, the actual code itself. But typically they're manually creating that. We, based on these contexts they initially provide, are able to then generate these additional work products, which then combine with the original context we receive about the application and the organization, create a much greater contextual set of information that we can provide to our agents so that those agents will produce the actual code that needs to get created. The other thing that we do is that we approach it from a much more incremental perspective. Many of the solutions in the market today try to create a very broad solution. It's like, I want a new banking application for me. Please go create that, right? And so then off it goes. The magic starts to occur. Instead, we break this down into very specific tasks. We call them user stories that you would normally assign to your traditional development team. You're never going to ask an engineer to build a banking app. You might start there, but the next step you're going to do is you're going to get down into very
you're going to go
specific
break it down with those user stories, one step after it.
We do the same thing.
Okay.
So
are you a product or are you a service? You're a product, not a service. So it means people buy a product and they integrate it into their environment. Is that what it is?
Think of it as another tool that they can use to expedite their product development activities. But not only are we a tool, we're not trying to replace tools they already use. We actually integrate with tools that they may already use, such as Jira for product management or a Git repo. Those are two great tools that we integrate with right now that provide us with an amazing contextual picture about the application that they're building. You get the history of all the tickets that have ever been completed and the tickets that they're working on, as well as the code that they produced already. With that information and additional information that they would provide us, we're able to begin to produce all of those outcomes that they typically have to create on their own. Those work products like PRDs and wireframes, and then ultimately the code that we produce as well.
So let me rephrase a little bit, trying so that people who are listening can understand what Intelligenic is all about. And we want to compare it to tools like Windsurf or maybe GitHub Copilot, where you integrate it with your development, or other tools where they integrated with VS Code to now use agents to now the developer now give either allow the agent to take control over certain code development or use vibe coding to maybe give some commands for it to now review and maybe make corrections. And some companies don't want to integrate this GitHub Copilot or things like that into their environments. They want to leave it because they are not sure. So what does Intelligenic do in that? Where do you fit?
Yeah, absolutely. So those tools you've mentioned are great. They're fantastic. They require a certain level of understanding and expertise to be able to get done to produce the code that you're looking for.
You're right.
So they assume that you have a deep understanding of the process required to get to that point where you understand what you need to instruct it to do and what context you need to provide to it to produce. If you can do that on your own, then you're all set. You're capable of doing that. The reality is there's very few people in the world that are actually capable of doing that. The population is very small. So what Intelligenic does that's different is it helps the people, the software engineers, the product managers, the UX UI designers, everybody that's involved in the software development process to understand what information they need to provide to begin to create that context picture. Context required to get those models to produce high quality output. And it guides them through the process. So before you get to code, you need to have a deep understanding of the requirements that you're trying to address.
For sure.
You need to understand what that user interface needs to look like. You need to understand what the stakeholders really require. Like there's a lot of steps that go into it.
Right.
People don't just sit down and start banging away on a keyboard and produce
No,
code.
of
And that doesn't
course.
work that way. So we
Okay.
guide them through that whole process, create additional context that gets combined with the first piece of context that they provide related to the application that they want to
Right.
build and the organization that they're part of. That combination of the context we create with the context that they originally created allows us then to begin to produce code in an incremental fashion. The other thing that we do is we create that code at the user story by user story level. There's no other product that I know of that actually manages the whole process to get to that point to produce code in that incremental fashion. It's usually, they're biting off much more than they can chew, trying to create much more than really is realistic.
Right. So traditionally we do something like automation. We automate something they call people try to automate their environment. But what you're describing is something like an Intelligenic.ai does something like intelligent automation. How is this different? Can you maybe explain a little bit different to our listeners how intelligent automation is different from traditional automation, for example?
Automation different than what we're doing? Is that what you're asking me?
No. Traditional automation is different from what you guys are doing.
I see what you're saying. So I think you're referring to robotic process automation, like RPA solutions.
Developers, sometimes they have processes where they automate the environment. They build, like when you use GitHub and source code management tools, just automate the process, goes and builds, and then someone, once you develop it, it goes, builds it, and then you see the product at the end, maybe using a pipeline or CI/CD pipeline, things like that, just automate the process. But what you're describing here is, it seems like the process that is really helping to build a production ready product, right?
Yeah.
A service or software.
Yeah, I've had a fair amount of experience in robotic process automation, and the tools historically have required humans to define that workflow,
Right.
and work with the tool set to automate the activities that you associate with the workflow. Sometimes they record you, using an application. That's been a pretty traditional technique that they've used. In other cases, you can come in and you can, you're almost like you're writing meta code. It's not really code itself, but it's
Right.
like, it's almost a set of scripts that you're going to create to automate a process, right? But it's still very human centric to get to that point. The difference between how we are doing that versus the traditional and historical methods is that we are utilizing our agentic framework. So we've got a whole set of AI agents we've developed, handle various different steps in that workflow. So we've defined the workflow.
Okay.
And our agents are the ones that then automate the activities associated with that. In some cases, they might be very present to the end users, like it would be a traditional chat agent that I think that everybody's very familiar with, that will ask questions of the user about what they're trying to do. And then based on the answers to those questions, it then, perform some activities. In other cases, our agents are operating behind the scenes. Like we know we need to complete certain tasks and activities to produce certain sorts of outcomes to produce that. So the major difference there is that, number one, we've defined what that workflow should look like. And then number two, we've created a whole framework of AI-enabled agents to manage the steps in that workflow to get to the outcomes that we produce.
Okay, sounds good. So let's for customers, can you walk us through maybe a real customer use case where you start from the problem they had, what Intelligenic built, and the impact that they achieved after that, probably just in brief, and just like what impact they had, like at the end of it. If you've had a use case where you did.
I don't know that I can share any examples.
Yeah,
don't
share any proprietary information, but just walk us through for people who may want to benefit from it. A problem of company X, they had this challenge. Intelligenic did this, and this is the impact they had. Maybe they cut down their time of build from maybe by 80% or maybe by 30%. Maybe the developers were enhanced, were able to produce something faster, or or they didn't need to hire more resources because Intelligenic was already there. That kind of a use case scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we are literally too early to be able to share those types of outcomes. But I can talk to you about what we believe the outcomes will be able to produce. At least for anybody that is developing software, we believe we can improve their productivity by 50% and reduce their overall costs by at least that, if not more. The way that we do that is by helping them to, they can use our framework to be able to provide information about the software that they want to build and the organization that it's going to enhance and the users that it's going to impact. If they integrate into the systems that they already use today, things like Jira for product management or Git repos to manage their code, there's a whole litany of other products that we'll integrate with as well. The more of this information that they provide to us, the greater the context picture becomes for us, and the better the context is that we can provide to our agents to produce the outcomes associated with that. We've begun to work with a pretty large government organization, I can't really say what it is, to help them improve their crop management for software development. And they already recognize the benefits associated with it. One of the things we will do, in addition to the automation of code creation, is that we will automate the creation of Jira tickets and DevOps tickets, the actual tickets that you use to assign to people to perform an activity related to software development. There's a lot of effort associated with that. If anybody is, that's listening to this has ever tried to do that, if you do it right, it requires a lot of time and effort. I mean, more than just writing one line. Where you say, I want you to go, write a user log. I'm talking about writing the Gherkin tickets, the acceptance criteria, sharing examples about the actual user interface that's associated with that, other dependent user stories and tickets associated with that. All that detail, which is a developer's dream, by the way, to get that level of detail, will absolutely enhance not only your ability to produce software faster because you're not having to spend as much time writing those tickets, but then also it enhances the quality that's produced because there's no doubt regarding what needs to be built. It actually fixes a problem associated with alignment between the stakeholders. Most software development initiatives fail because there's a lack of alignment. But now, because you've provided this incredible deep detail on what needs to be addressed in this ticket, the developer knows exactly what needs to be built. It doesn't have to iterate as much, and they actually produce something that is more aligned to what the end users would expect.
So just to build on that, when it comes to architecting the software, because I listened to a podcast before, and one of the challenges some CEOs say is that what they need now, with the advent of vibe coding and all this, the challenge may not be, maybe coding may not be the challenge, but the architecting of a product may be a challenge, right? Like, let's say you have to, as you said, you need, even though there's vibe coding, there's everything, but you need to even know how to write the prompts, how to get the prompts to produce what you really want. If you don't know the context and the background and the prompt engineering may be a challenge. But another aspect is architecting a product. Like, you need to know, if you don't know what you want to do, you may not know what prompt you want to run. First of all, at least know something. Where does architecting fall? Does Intelligenic help in architecting a product or a service that companies may want to create?
That's core to what we do. So not only are we defining all of those product management work products and those discovery work products to define what you should be building, we're also defining the architecture related to the actual system itself. And that goes well beyond just the software. In the architecture that we create, we're also recommending the underlying infrastructure to support that and the approach to integrate with systems that you may be able to integrate with, creating that additional context that goes into that context mesh that we create. And then to get the code, to ensure that the agents produce the right code, we take that information and we convert that into markdown files. This is key. So if you vibe code, you know what this means. The models that are used to vibe code, they look for markdown files. That gives them context about what they should go build.
What you should do. Yeah.
And if they don't exist, they create markdown files. Now, the history of markdown files is that humans always used it as a method of documentation so that they understood what the software is that was built, why it was built, that sort of thing. The reality is most humans didn't create many markdown files. It was usually just a README. That was it. What we do is we go to the extreme where we're creating markdown files that represent the architecture, indicates what the data model is. It indicates the actual instructions that will be used by our agents to produce code. It's just an incredible high level set of detail that goes into the markdown files that we create so that it actually is producing code that meets the architecture that you're defining during the early stages of the process when you're defining what the product needs to be built.
Wow, that's good. I mean, it's really a niche that a lot of companies don't get into because most of them really need to depend on the human resource to architect a product and build it. I can be a software developer. I'm like, okay, whatever I want, I'm going to build it. I'm going to develop, but I wouldn't be there I wouldn't architect your product for you. It's not my place. I'm just coming to code. And that's where the challenge is. So in the rounding up, I know this is a 2-part series. If a CEO is listening to you right now, what should they automate first? What is one myth about automation or AI that you want to eliminate today? And where can people learn about Intelligenic AI or get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, let me answer that in a couple of different ways. First of all, you're 100% correct. Like many of those things related to architecture and many of those other steps, even code, have been very human centric previously.
Right.
I'm not suggesting that we're replacing humans. What
Right.
I'm suggesting is that it's going to enhance the professionals' capabilities that are already doing this today. And so
Perfect.
I would never recommend that you would just use our platform and just take the code that's produced and everything that's produced from it at face value. It
Right.
always requires the human to review
Human
it
touch.
and to make sure that it's actually truly meeting your needs and aligns with the organization's goals. As far as what I would recommend automating right away, Intelligenic is uniquely positioned to automate as many facets of the software development lifecycle as possible. So it's not really a question anymore of what I should start with. It's a question of how do I best use it to improve my ability to produce high quality software as quickly as possible. Because we enable organizations that are consistently writing software the ability to refine the way that they define the software that they want to build, to document the software that they need to build, and then architect it so that you can get to the point where you're able to begin to create software in a more incremental fashion. What I would recommend that people do, though, is avoid trying to build everything all at once. It's a trap that I see organizations fall into all the time.
So you need
And
these
a lot of
user
the
stories.
platforms that exist today, they try to build it too much. You would never do that if you didn't use artificial intelligence. You would assign a user story and the ticket associated with that to your developer to go build that. And then you'd confirm that that was built and you'd integrate with everything else.
Right.
Follow the same process.
It's the same
Our
process.
framework is engineered with that process in mind and with the software development professional in mind. So again, answering your question, it's not a question about what I should automate. It's about how I should use a framework like an Intelligenic to enhance the capabilities of my organizations to be able to produce that software much faster with much greater quality.
Right. Well, thank you. So another question I wanted to know, if customers want to talk to you or they want to talk to Intelligenic.ai, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to do it is to go to our website. So Intelligenic.ai is the website. You can contact us by sending an email to information@Intelligenic.ai or info @Intelligenic.ai. We'll be happy to discuss how we can assist you with your software development activities and get you started by using our platform so that you can, like I said, build better software faster. That's our motto.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll see you on the other side.